Supposed to be that test today?
Yeah.
Okay, that's not bad. We're a page behind.
Oh, stop. Just
we're on Daf Zion right now. Zion Amid Aleph 7a. We're up to Taner Rabbanan. Shnayim Adukim Bishtar, which is about 10 lines from the bottom. You see that? Does that make sense? Okay.
From which page?
Zion Amid Aleph.
Yeah.
We thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. And then the schus of our learning. Sometimes even twice a day. And learning in the memory of Sahavat Golda Bas Baruch Binyamin. And anyone that needs to refer Shleima, thank you. Tara Rabbanu was taught in a brisa. Shnayim Adukim Bishtar. Two people that are grasping on to one document. The document says in it that Shimon owes Reuven money. Okay, so Reuven's holding the document and Shimon's holding the document. Whoever's holding the document is going to have the money. If Reuven is holding the document, then he's going to be able to use it to collect from Shimon. Shimon's holding the document, that means he already paid back and he received the document as his receipt. And now they're grabbing onto it. It's very significant who's holding it here. So Malvaimer, the lender, he's saying, Shalihu, it's mine, v'nafal mimeni, and I dropped it, matzasav, and then I found it. And then this guy comes along and grabs onto it, but I found it, and it was mine the whole time, and it's supposed to be mine. The Leiva says, the borrower, he says, Shalcho Prativ, you know what? You know what? It was actually a real document. I'm not claiming that this document was not good. It was a good document. And I actually borrowed money from you, and this document was yours, and you used it to collect, but I paid you back, and now you gave it to me. So the rule is, Rebbe says that you have to validate the document. What does it sound like after you validate the document? You're going to give it to Reuven, and Reuven's going to use it to collect. We have to see in the Gemara what's going on here, because it sounds like Reuven wins the case. That's what it appears.
He returns the document after it's paid? Or?
Shimon's claims that he paid it. Reuven's claims that you didn't pay it.
So, I mean, usually what they do, it's like a receipt.
Yeah, in those days, they didn't necessarily have a receipt. Depends who was holding the document. If the lender was holding the document, then he could use to collect. And when after the borrower pays back, and the borrower gets the document to keep, I assume he would tear it up. But he's saying here, he was given the document and he's holding it as his receipt.
Did they make any changes on documents? Or
no, just the one that's holding it.
I'm good. So like these cases where two people are holding something at once, they kind of walk the base stand holding this thing.
Yeah. No one's giving up. Yeah. You want it to be like those big checks when people win the lottery. Yeah, there's like massive checks.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was what Rebbe holds. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. Very interesting. Rebbe's father. Shimon ben Gamliel. He says, no, we're going to divide it. Just like in the Mishnah, you divide it. So we're going to have to say that he maybe paid half. And he's going to have to pay the other half. Nafali Adayan, if it fell into the hands of a judge. Now, the Gemara is going to explain that it's not exactly the way it sounds right here, but it fell into the hands of a judge. Lo Yetzia Lamis. Then you can never use it to collect. It stays in his hands the whole time. Rabbi Yossi says, no, it's a good document. You can use it to collect. Okay. So we have when they're both holding it, we have a machlekes, Rebbe and Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, and we have when someone else is holding it, we have a machlekes. Amar Mar, let's go back to the.
What is Rebbe saying? Skayma shtar replacement?
The Skayma shtar sounds like, we're going to see in a moment, but what it sounds like is that Reuven, who is the lender, can now use this document to collect, which is weird because Shimon is holding on to half of it.
Does the shtar itself have any value?
So the star is going to get value. You mean
No,
like the
not-
paper
yeah.
itself? That the Gemara just tosses away. What do you think? It's just this used to stuff a bottle. That's nothing. So yeah, today we would say for telephone numbers on the back. So okay, so Amar Mar, we have to go back to analyze what happened over here in the words of Rebbe. It says Yiskayim Ashtar B'Chisamav. You have to validate the document. The way you validate the document is you notarize it. You go to Besdin, and Besdin checks out the signatures. They call in witnesses. Do you recognize? Oh, they call in the signatories. Is that a word? They'll call them in themselves. Signatory, is that the word? They call them in and they say, "Is this your signature? Is this your signature?" So they have to validate this document, and then on the bottom they're going to write that the three of us were sitting and in front of us came these two witnesses and testified to these signatures. It's called the handpick, which we had before. We've discussed
probably
it.
find like another document with a similar
Or
signature.
they'll find another document that's been validated and they'll compare. Okay, so what the Gemara says now, that if that's the case, the Gavale Malva Kula, so we're going to validate the document, and then Ruvain, who was the lender, is now going to collect the whole document. So Rebbe doesn't hold of our Mishnah that two people are holding on to something, you have to split it. Over here, it looks like Ruvain wins the whole case. Amar Rav Nachman. Rav says the name of Rav Nachman, b'makuyim divrei kol yachleiku. If the document would have been validated before, or now, if it's validated, then we're going to divide the document. The whole machlokes here between Rebbe and Reb Shimon ben Gamliel is when it's not mekuyim. Rebbe savar meid b'shtar shekas v'tzarich l'kaim. I'll explain what's going on. Rebbe says that if Shimon agrees that the document was valid, all he's claiming is that I paid it back. And therefore, the document was given to me and I dropped it. So we still need to validate that document, because what we're left with now is on whose support do we say that this document is valid? It's only on the support from Shimon. Shimon's the one that's claiming that it's valid, but he's also saying that he paid it back. But if we don't, if we validate it independent of Shimon's agreeing, so then we'll have to split he'll be able to collect half. My timer. What's the reason if we don't validate it? If it's just considered like a piece of clay shard, it's considered nothing. Who's considering this document valid? Leiva. That was the borrower. That was Shimon. Hakamar Defriya, and he says that it was paid back. So basically, what we adjusted between the question and the answer is that in the question we thought that Reuven's going to be able to collect 100% of the debt, and in the answer we're saying that no, after we validate it, then he's able to collect 50% of the debt. And if we don't validate it, then he can't collect anything. Why can't he collect anything? They're both of them are holding on to it. He's claiming it's his. He's claiming it's his. The reason is because we don't know that this document is good. The only way that we know that this document is valid is not from Reuven. We know it's valid from Shimon, because he's the one that's admitting that it's a good document. But if we're going to trust him, then we have to trust him that it was also paid back. You want to trust me that it's a good document, so trust me that it was paid back. So what Rebbe's opinion now is that it doesn't mean that Reuven can collect all of it. It just means that if we can independently validate this document without Shimon, by getting witnesses to testify to the signatures, then we can use this document to collect half. Just like our Mishnah, two people holding on to a talk. Over here, if it's valid independently of Shimon, we can use it when we can divide it. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel savar. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says, he says that once he admits that it's good, once Shimon admits that the document is good, you don't have to independently validate it. Even though it's not validated, we still divide it. The fact is, he admitted that it's a good document, and so therefore we'll divide it up, and he can collect half. Do you have any explanation for the machlekes? Any comments on your things? What is the explanation for the machlekes of Moed B'Shtar Shekasru? I understand Rebbe.
There's a halacha.
Rebbe has it's like a pesha asar. I'm the one that's saying that it's good. If you want to trust me that it's good, then you have to trust me the whole thing, right? That's that I understand. But why would he say that just because he says that it's good, now we're not now? What would be the explanation for Shimon ben Gamliel? Any notes?
There's a halacha.
Show me in this one. But the halacha is it's not like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel that I'm aware of. 1 second. Certified doc. 1 second. Yeah, I dropped the head. 37. If a creditor has an authentic note of indebtedness in his possession, this creates a presumption of non-payment. He can thus use it to collect his debt. According to Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, this is true even if the debtor conceded that the document's authenticity, but claimed to have repaid the debt. He rejects Rebbe's migu for the following reasons. Granted, the debtor could have entered a stronger plea that the document was forged, rather than the weaker one that the debt was repaid. This does not create a presumption that he is telling the truth, though, because the stronger plea may have been refuted by witnesses. The debtor may thus have chosen the weaker plea, not because he is telling the truth, but because the plea is irrefutable. That's Taisus and Ksubas. So in other words, he doesn't have a migu to see. He could have said that the whole document's a forgery because it wasn't validated. You want to trust me that that it's a good document, so then you have to trust me that I paid it back. I could have said that there's no loan here. But the problem with that, according to Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says, the problem with that is that they could have brought witnesses that would refute him. It's easier for him to say that he paid back. So according to Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, he doesn't have a migo. Very interesting.
It reminds me of the situation where the person receives a loan and then he doesn't deny the loan. He just says, "Oh, well, I paid him back like to gain time to pay him back." Because if it gets too much, like to outright like say, "Oh, look, this paper is not valid." So this paper is valid.
Yeah, but we don't say that he's buying time when he's claiming that he doesn't owe anything. We only said that he's buying time and with a partial admission. This is not a partial admission. This is saying I don't know anything. I paid it all back. This document it's not the forgery, but it's not valid because I paid it already. You can't use it against me. Okay. Now we go to the next piece of the Brisa, the Tana Rabbanan, and it said Nafali Adayan. It said if the judge found the document that was dropped from we don't know who. That's the big question. Who dropped the document? If the judge found it, then lo yitzia lamis. It can never be used. You can't give it back. Why specifically to the judge? What's the difference if the judge found it or if someone else found it? It says Amarava Hachika. Amarava explains. It says this is what it means. Another individual that found the document that had already been in the Dayan's hands. What does it mean it was in the Dayan's hands? The Kasab Bey Henpik, it already has this Henpik. Henpik means that it's been notarized. So we don't mean Nafali Adayan. We mean that Achar Nafali Adayan, Achar Shabali Adayan, it was Nafal, and someone else finds it. So then Layitzia Lamis. Then you don't use it. Even though the document's been notarized, you still don't use it. Now, this is not only like for sure, if the document wasn't notarized, it can't be used because it's very possible that someone was planning on borrowing money. So he had the document written because he's about to approach the rich guy to tell him, can you please lend me $100? And I have a document already written. Let's just do it right now. But meanwhile, could be the guy said no. He just had the document prepared and he never even borrowed.
He has to sign. No?
He has the document prepared and he has witnesses sign on it. And
In his name?
but if the guy will agree, then good. Then he'll hand it to him to use.
Right.
But if the guy doesn't agree, then he's just gonna keep it or tear it up. Instead of tearing it up, he dropped it.
Dropped.
He left it. And now someone found it. We say
It's on-
don't give it back, because if you give it back, who are you going to give it back to the creditor? He's going to use it to collect, and no, the guy never borrowed.
Ah,
So ela afilu kasa behempik the makurim. But even if we know that it's a valid document, the signatures were signed, and the people when the signatories show up, they say that we signed it because we were there, we borrowed money, and then we know that it's good. Nevertheless, layach said the reason is the cheshinu lepirayin, because we suspect that maybe it was paid up.
it's like a blank check.
Right,
It was a similar situation with the guests.
similar to a get. If someone found the get,
They weren't allowed to.
right,
give it,
right,
because maybe
exactly. It could be
The
that it
husband
was
changed his mind.
right. Very good. The cheshinu lepirayin, because this opinion here, this first opinion, which is who? That's the Tanakama, the Chachamim. The Chachamim say you can't return it because cheshin lepirayin. That's the cheshin lepirayin. We suspect that it was already repaid. Rabbi Yossi says, no, it's a good document, and we don't say that it was paid up, which means that according to Rabbi Yossi, you return the document to the creditor. What's the words of Rabbi Yossi? Rabbi Yossi says, the document is valid, been notarized, and so the document's valid. We don't suspect that it was paid. The Gemara has a question. Rabbi Yossi doesn't hold, is not concerned that maybe that it was been paid up and we're just going to give it to Reuven and Reuven's going to use it to collect Vatanya. But we have a problem. We have a brisa that says, someone finds a ksuba document. Now, the ksuba was relevant usually after the divorce or widowed. She would go and use the money to collect from the estate or from the husband. Well, the document was found on the floor. Now, who do you give the document to? If you give it to the husband, then that means he paid it up already. If you give it to the wife, then she can go and collect with it. So, but we don't know who to give it to. In whose hands it is makes a big difference. So you find it on the floor. Bisman shabal maida, if the husband agrees that it hasn't been paid, so yachsalisha, then you return it to the woman. Ain abal maida, if the husband is claiming, I paid the ksuba already, I have already paid her. So then then you can't return it to anyone. She's claiming it. I never got my ksuba yet. I never got the money from the ksuba, and he's claiming I paid her already. So then you can't return it. Rabbi Yossi says, Rabbi Yossi is very logical. He says, depends. If she's still married, Yachsalisha, then let's assume that he hasn't given her ksuba yet. They're still married. Why would he pay her the ksuba and they're not even divorced? The ksuba is the payment that's done after they're divorced. Ksuba is not signed. It's all, everything is valid in the document. But the payment of the ksuba would only be after the divorce, after divorced or widowed. So basically says if they're married, then of course you return it to the woman. This Armalei Niskarsha, that's a different story. If she's widowed or divorced, now we don't know, was it paid or not? So that's when we would say that you don't return it. Now, what just happened over here is that if she's widowed or divorced, you don't return it according to Rabbi Yossi, because we assume that it could be it was paid. That's why you can't return it. You just told me before that if it's a validated document, then you do return it to the creditor and you let him collect. 1 second. Is Rabbi Yossi concerned that maybe it was paid? It's a contradiction. When it came to the loan, we said he's not concerned about that. It's a valid document. You can still use it. And when it came to the ksuba, we said we are concerned about that. Gemara says Eipach. We're going to need to adjust the opinions here because this is such a big problem. We're going to say that Rabbi Yossi is really the other opinion, and the other opinion is really Rabbi Yossi. And we're going to have to read it like this. Nafal liyadayan. If it fell into the hands of the judge, we're going back to that. Fell into the hands of a judge, which meant that it fell into someone else's hands after it's been validated. The rule is la yitzia lamis. We suspect that maybe it was paid, and you never return it. And this is not the Tanakama now. This is Divri Rabbi Yossi. That's the words of Rabbi Yossi. So now Rabbi Yossi will fit, because Rabbi Yossi says we're concerned that maybe it was paid, and now Rabbi Yossi over here says we're concerned that maybe it's paid. and so you can't return it. Chachamim but the Chachamim say no, you can return it. It's considered valid. You can return it, and the person will collect. Now the problem is now with the Chachamim is that the Chachamim say back by the debt, in the case of the debt, that we assume that it has not been paid. It's a valid document. The problem is that if the husband, by the ksuba, back to the ksuba case, if the husband doesn't agree to return it to the woman, he says, I already paid her, you can't give her the document. So the rule was, even according to the Chacham, that you can't return it. The difference between Rabbi Yossi and the Chachamim by the ksuba was slight. The whole difference was just if she's married or not. But if she's not married, both the Chachamim and Rabbi Yossi agree that you can't return it. Both of them are suspecting that maybe it was paid. Back by the chayiv, by the debt, the Chachamim said, no, it's a good document. So all we did over here was we fixed the opinion of Rabbi Yossi by changing his opinion back by the debt. And so we messed up the opinion of the Chachamim. So it says, Yachi, kasha derabanan aderabanan. So if that's the case, now we have a contradiction in the Chachamim. You resolved Rabbi Yossi, that's very nice. But by doing that, you messed up the opinion of the Chachamim. It's a contradiction of the Chachamim. Do we suspect that it was paid or not? The Gemara says, Shtar ksuba kula Rabbi Yossi. There actually is no Chachamim here. There's no opinion of the Chachamim. It looked like there was a Tanakama here, but there's really no Tanakama. It's v'chasuri mechsra v'hachik tani. The whole thing was Rabbi Yossi, and we're just missing words. You add in some words, you're going to see that there's no opinion of the Tanakama that say that we suspect that maybe it was paid. In our Brisa, back by the Tana Rabbanan, the Tanakama say that we don't suspect that it was paid. Which in the Brisa was Rabbi Yossi, but we switched it, so now it's the Chachamim.
In order for the get to take place, the husband has to pay the ksuba?
No. So something else. So it was a monetary, the get is something else. Get is just the divorce.
So
She could be divorced and he still owes her money. Yeah.
then why would they assume that if she was divorced, she was already paid?
Why would we assume that if she's divorced, she was paid? We're not necessarily assuming that if she was paid. We're saying that maybe she was paid, and that's why we're not giving it back to her, or giving it back to him. We're not giving it to anyone. So, it's missing words. It has to be read like this: Ein abal maida. If the husband doesn't agree, because he's claiming, the husband's claiming that he paid the ksuba already. Second. The husband says that he paid the ksuba already, so he's not agreeing to give the get, to give the ksuba back to the woman. So you don't give it to anyone because he doesn't agree. And when would we say that? That's only if she was widowed or divorced, where there was potential for this to take place, that he already paid it. But if she's still married, then you can give the ksuba back to the woman to collect. And now we add in the words, Divri Rabbi Yossi, that's Rabbi Yossi's view. Because Rabbi Yossi said that if you give it back, that while she's still married, you give it back to the woman. Okay. What we did in order to resolve this is we switched Rabbi Yossi with the Rabbanan, and then we dropped the whole Rabbanan in the second Brisa, and so now we're all clear. Rabbi Yossi fits perfectly, and the opinion of the Chachamim is that we don't suspect that it was repaid. We don't have any contradiction to that. Rav Papa says, you don't have to switch the opinion of Rabbi Yossi around. We could leave Rabbi Yossi as is. And we can do it like this. He's actually talking to the Chachamim, but he's not saying his own opinion. He's telling them, my opinion is not relevant here. I just have a question on you. Why, by you, according to you, according to me, I feel in this Armala, in this Garsha, even if she's widowed or divorced, and I also don't suspect that it was paid, and it will give it back to the husband. It will give it back to the wife in this case, wife to go and collect. But the Didchu, I guess according to Rabbi Yossi, we would say that once it's paid, then they probably would have torn it up. The fact that it still exists means that it wasn't paid yet. But according to you, at least you should agree that while she's still married, the Yachsalisha, that you can give it back to the woman. It wasn't even eligible to be paid. She's still married. Why would he ever pay a ksuba while they're still married? So Rabbi Yossi is telling the Chachamim, not that, what was the original? Rabbi Yossi says, you return it to the woman. Really, according to Rabbi Yossi, I hold that you always return it to the woman. But you should at least agree that while she's married, you should return it to the woman. Now we resolved what Rabbi Yossi said before, that if you have a document that's been validated, you can return it to the lender.
Is he saying that even after it's been paid, it's returned to the woman?
No.
No.
Rabbi
Okay.
Yossi holds.
Okay.
Rabbi Yossi holds we don't have to suspect that any valid document hasn't been paid.
Right. Right.
There would have been a big X over it, a stamp, been paid, a big red stamp.
So I've been thinking this whole time there would be no question.
Yeah.
If they would always write paid and the witnesses would sign.
Right. So that's Rabbi Yossi's view, and according to Rav Papa, you don't have to adjust Rabbi Yossi around, because even though Rabbi Yossi over here seems to contradict his opinion, but don't worry about that, because Rabbi Yossi over here wasn't saying his opinion. He was just telling the Chachamim that even if you're going to argue with me, but at least you should agree that if she's still married, that you can give it back to her, and don't suspect that it's been paid. Okay. Amalei Rabbanan, the Rabbanan say to Rabbi Yossi, how do you know? Maybe he had designated money in a like an escrow account for her ksuba, and what's going to happen now is that she's going to have two payments. She's going to get that escrow account, and she's also going to use the document to collect from the inheritors or something. So, which is a problem. So that's why the Chacham say just because she's still married does not mean that it's not definite that she's hasn't received her payment. It could be that maybe she hasn't received it, but it's already been designated for her. It's called shrari wrapped. Shrari means like bound up in a bundle.
Rabbi, we learned the situation where she would sell her to
the. Right. That could be also. Right. Ravina says Leila Mepach Kamai. So you have to adjust the opinions in the first price, and say that Rabbi Yossi is the opinion that it's not a good document. You can't return it. And the Chachamim's opinion is that it is a good document. So we're going to switch those opinions around. And then the time of the Rabbanan Hacha, what's the reason over here why the Rabbanan would say, let's get this clear. Rabbi Yossi that says that it's a good document is we're being switched to the opinion of the Rabbanan that say that it's not a good document. And the Rabbanan's opinion is going to say that it is a good document. So now back to the Ksuba. Why over here did the Rabbanan say not to return it? If by the debt they said that you can yes return it, because time of the Rabban Nachum Mishum Dechesin L'Shtei Ksubas. Maybe he wrote her two documents. He wrote her a one document. Very nice. Reb Naftali, are you in at home, or are you with your children somewhere? I can't hear.
My granddaughter is getting married Monday night, so my children and grandchildren are starting to come in.
Oh, beautiful. Mazel tov.
Thank you.
Mazel tov. This is Gedalia's daughter, right?
Oldest daughter, yes.
Oh, very nice.
Thank you.
So, okay. So we have a concern that maybe there were two marriage documents that were written here. He wrote her an extra. He wrote her an extra document. Maybe she lost it, something like that. So therefore, the Rabbanon over here don't want it to be returned, even though normally the Rabbanon would say that it's not a problem to return a document. Rabbi Yossi is not concerned that there was an extra document. The interesting thing is, how come Rabbi Yossi doesn't mention any? How come the Rabbanon don't mention anything? And maybe he wrote a second loan document. Maybe he lost the document. I'm not sure.
In the comment, it says that he also maintains that if the husband would have drafted a second one, he would do so like publicly, like in the first one.
No, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi's opinion is that if the husband would have drafted a second document, he would have done it in the Bezdin, and we don't have to be concerned that happened because no one heard about it.
If the public was not aware of it, we dismiss the policy.
Right. Amar Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar says, Rabbi Elazar is a friend of Rabbi Yechanan. He's a big rabbi in Israel. I think it's called Maradar de Israel or something. It's called maybe Amri Marafa he was from, I think he was in Babel originally, but he's in Eretz Yisrael, and he says halachas. He says machlekes. The machlekes, if we say you divide the document and it collects half, that's when b'shneim adukim b'teifes or shneim b'teiref. That's when that case when the Tanur Rabbanon, when they came into court, each holding onto the document, each of them are either holding on to the template of the document, or they're holding on to the part of the document that's the fill-in part that has the names and the money. Right? There's two parts to every document. One is the specifics of this case. Another one is, and therefore, right, all the stuff that you don't need to fill it out for each one. It's just there as a standard. So the typhus is the standard, and the tairif is the specifics. But if one is holding on to the standard part, which is the end of it, and that one is holding on to the beginning part, which is the all the details, right? The date and the people and the money. What's going to happen is we're going to cut the document, and this one's going to take the important part, and this will take the secondary part. Rabbi Yechanan says no. If they're holding on to the document, you just divide the document. The Gemara says, "Tanya, how could he say that?" We have a brisa that says when they're holding on to the talis, each one takes as far as his hand could reach, which means basically that you cut it, and then you divide the rest. The Gemara says, talking about over here when he says that they divide it, it's talking about that the tairef, which is the important part of the document, is straight in the center of it. So that's why we're going to divide it equally. So what's the chiddush over here? So it's like it's not 100% in the middle. It's more leaning towards one side. So could have thought that we said, okay, let's divide it like this, and I get the whole tairef. Why are you dividing it like this? Divide it like that. Okay. The Gemara now asks, Amalei Rav Acha Midifti l'Ravina. Rav Acha Midifti says to Ravina, Rabbi Eliezer, according to Rabbi Eliezer, Damer said Neitel Teifus and Neitel Teiref, that says that if one is holding the Teiref, one is holding the specifics, one's holding the template. So then each one takes his part. So he says, Lamali, what does he need that for? Does he need it just to stuff up a wine bottle because he lost the cork? He wants to push this in. Like what's the point of the document if it doesn't have those details in it? Amalei, he says, Lidame. There's different values to each of these documents. Damar Hachi, he says the following: Start this space man kama shavi. This is what Rabbi Elazar is saying. You see, even the template has in it, the end of the document has in it the amount of money and it has the names. It just doesn't have the date. The date is only written at the top. So the guy that gets the bottom of the document, because you're always supposed to repeat the main contents of the document in the bottom line, right before the signature. You always repeat the last. The But a document that doesn't have the date, how much is it worth? The less pays man. A document that has the date, how much is it worth? The document with less pays man kamashavi. And if it does have the date, it doesn't have the date, how much is it worth? The contrast. The started this pays man government shabdi. If it has a date in it, then you're able to collect from property, from has a sold property even. Why? What's the difference if there's a date? Because when someone buys a property, they try to find out if the seller has debts, any debts that he has, because he knows that the creditors are going to come and they're going to take this liens on that property. They're going to take it away. But if the document doesn't have a date, that could mean that that document you can't collect, because people, it could be that the debt was created later after the property was sold. Then the guy's going to come back and collect. Are you supposed to find out what's going to happen later? If a later creditor can collect from a property that's been sold before the loan was made, then that would be totally ridiculous. So a document that doesn't have a date in it would not be able to collect from liens on property. V'idach, and the other document, like government mishabdi, you can't collect from. So yav lehachta beni beni. So what does that mean? Yav lehachta beni beni. You give him something in the middle. What does that say? Yeah. Yeah. Therefore, whoever holds the document for must give his adversary the difference between its value and that of the document's essence, which means what? The difference between an undated and a dated document is assessed and awarded to the creditor if it is he who has the tariff in his hand. The remainder of the debt is divided equally between the parties. Yes, they have to split it. Is this when they're both holding both? Guess so. What does it say by you? Yeah, so there. Therefore, the other party who is grasping the standard part of the document gives him the difference between the two values. Oh, no, it's when he's holding the specifics of the document, the part that has the date on it. So the other person has to give him the value of the document with the date.
The note mentions that some people hold that the beginning of the document is the most important.
Right. Oh, really? Oh, that's a different opinion. Okay.
Standard, it says standard part and essential part.
Okay. Now the Gemara says, when you say over here that you divide it, that always means not that you actually cut it in half, but that just means the value. It means the value of it is divided. Just by the document didn't mean that you cut the document in half. It meant that you pay the difference. But if you don't say this, what are you going to do? Two people holding on to the talus. You think you're going to cut the talus in half? You're going to ruin the whole thing. The Gemara says, kasha, that's not a problem. The chazi liktanim, maybe they actually cut it in half, and now you have two talasim, but they're child size. Now, Rava says, that if the talus is golden, then you divide it. But the children don't wear golden, things. That's for adults. They wear fancy clothes. So we're going to cut that. It says maybe they're princes, and the young princes are going to wear like that. Gemara says says two people are arguing over an animal. They're both riding on the animal, or one's riding and one's leading. What are you going to do? Cut the animal in half? You're going to ruin the animal. Well, maybe if it's a kosher animal, okay, maybe it means they're gonna split the meat. And Ella Tameya has to do it, but if it's an animal, that's all its whole value is just to do work. Or to right, what are you gonna do with half an animal? So Ella Ladami, rather it means that it's we split the value. Yeah. I know.
Did they end up splitting the talus at the end, or?
It's the value. I know about someone that got divorced, and they owned the car together, and so they had to split up the car. But someone said you should just given her half a car from from the junkyard. Just pick up a half a car. Okay, so Amar Rami Bar Chama. We have time for this. Let's try it. Rami Bar Chama says. We're talking, Mechayim was mentioning this at the beginning on the first day of Metzia when we were learning this. It says that when you're picking up this this talus, you have to pick up the whole talus. Now, you have two people possibly that are picking it up. Rami Bar Chama says, from the Mishnah that we explained it, that the two people arguing over a talus, that's possible that both people picked it up together. It has to be that this is an object that was found on the floor. Now there's a discussion. If you pick it up for yourself, you found an object. Okay, you found a treasure. It's yours. But can you pick it up for someone else and say, I'm picking it up not for myself but for someone else? The problem with that is that it's taifes l'balchayv makam shachav la'achirim. If you're taking it for yourself, fine. But if you're taking it for someone else, then there could have been a lot of people standing around that wanted it, and you're just taking it away from all of them, and it's not even for yourself. Do you have the rights to gift anything to someone? But do you have those rights? Like the Zachan Ladam Shlei B'fanav, you can gift something to someone if it's beneficial. But do you have those rights even when it's to the detriment of other people that are standing around? So over here, when you're getting this object and you're picking it up for yourself and theoretically for the other person that's picking it up also, that's causing a loss to everyone that's standing around. But anyway, Rami Bar Chama says, we learned from the Mishnah that you're able to do it. You're able to pick up a lost object and for your friend to acquire. Because if you would enter your mind to say that your friend can't acquire it when you're picking it up. So it's going to come out that both of them is considered like on the ground and no one would acquire it. Because if each one can't pick it up for the other one, it's not going to work. And a third party that's going to come around could grab it from both of them. Must be that each one can assist in the other one's acquiring because they're able to acquire it for them. Amar Rava, that was Rami Bar Chama. Rami Bar Chama is the son-in-law of Chisda, and Rava is also Amar Rava. Rava is his friend. Rava says, it could be really that you can pick up something just for some other person. What's the reason over here why you can acquire it? Well, over here, you're acquiring half. The fact that you're acquiring half allows you the rights to cause a detriment to the rest of the world by acquiring it for the other person that's picking it up with him. Teda, I'll prove it to you. Let's say someone tells to a messenger, say uganovli, go and steal from me. The ganav, person went and stole. Pater. Who's pater? The one that sent, because ain't shliach ledvar avera. He doesn't have to, right? There's no messenger. But if two people stole, chayavim, they do have to pay double. My time, what's the reason? Must be because if you're acquiring it for yourself, you're also acquiring it for the friend. Amar Rava. Okay, let's leave it over here. By Amar Rava.
This is like the whole. Just reminded me it's off and.
Interesting.
Did you ever get to the end of the talus part? Did they rip it in half, or did one person pay?
We